I told the wife, I was like, well, honey, it's another Everly night, so it's going down. So she
What is that?
was,
Don't wait up for me, babe.
Yeah. Oh my God.
turn the lights down low. It's an Everly night.
Oh.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
This is
I'm not even drunk this time. It's just saying stupid shit as I always do. Alrighty. Well, hey, let's talk some arcade games.
yeah. So of all of us, who actually had like a formal like arcade? When I say formal, who actually had a building that was legitimately just like wall to wall arcade games growing up in their hometown?
Chelsea did.
I did too.
Excellent.
All right, so that was me and Mark. We're arcadeless.
Well, I wouldn't say I was arcadeless. I think the unique thing that I had growing up was basically like on a 2-year rotation. I had moved from one location to another strategically across the country. So the arcades did exist because there was a thing called the post exchange on every military base, and every post exchange was like the military's version of a Walmart. So you go in there, and they're like right next usually to where the haircut place was. So you get a haircut for like $4, by the way. Really good deal.
Ooh.
But right next to that was the arcade, which, you know, was prominently featured everywhere. It was like if you had NPCs in a video game, guys, it was the same setup everywhere. You get your pizza, your haircut, your arcade. Boom. You're on your way. Sorry, long story. Anyway.
No, that's solid. No, I had a pizza place that had some arcades at it, and then a little ice cream shop that had 2 arcades at it consistently. They rotated out. So never a true arcade, but always some place that had either something incredibly greasy or sugary and video games for the children to enjoy.
Yes. We I think so. Our arcade moved in when I was like in high school or something like that, like early high school, and it was truly just like this nerdy guy that had, you know, hobby collected hundreds of classic arcade machines.
Ooh.
Freaking awesome.
Over the years, and it was a true 25-cent per play arcade. So it wasn't like having to play Galaga for $1.25 or anything like that. It was everything was a quarter, and it was freaking sweet.
They've kind of come back to that again.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been to arcades recently. Like, they were gone for years. Well, they did that thing, like you said, where it was like, you know, you'd have to have 10 quarters in your pocket to play for 5 minutes.
Right.
And now, you know, all the ones that there's kind of been a resurgence in kind of like classic style, and they just have quarter games. Because I think it's because nowadays they make money in other ways. Whereas back then they could make enough money just as an arcade. They could literally just have video games in like 1989 and they would make enough money to survive. And I'm going to assume that Nintendo becoming like the original NES becoming more accessible kind of started that to phase out, because I noticed a big shift in arcades when I was a kid. Is it okay if I go in? I'm just going to start talking about
please monologue.
Roll right into it.
So arcades for me, I have like a love-hate relationship with, because I was born in 1983, and the first things I saw, like you guys were mentioning these machines in stores, I was actually at a Modell's when I was like 4 years old, and this was before they were only sporting goods. It was like a full department store Modell's back then, and they had maybe 10 arcade machines, and I saw all these teenagers hanging out by them playing them, and my mom wouldn't let me play it. Right?
Well, it was because the teenagers all had like sleeveless leather coats with spikes all over them.
Yeah,
Greasers.
and they were,
probably
on acid and doing, you know,
nothing but angst and punk rock.
So then I would see in movies too. I would always see like teenagers hanging out in an arcade, and back then I just really wanted to be a teenager so bad. And there was one time where I was able to go to an arcade by me, and this was like, you know, it was before all of the like kind of what I call carnival style games they have now, like in Dave and Buster's. It was just video games. Like they had Marble Madness with the rollerball. They had obscure beat 'em ups like DJ Boy and all these games that looked better than they would on the console ports that were about to come. And I was able to go there once for like an hour. Absolutely loved it. Now, after that, I didn't really get to go to an arcade again. I mean, here and there, but when I started being able to go alone was when I was around like 13, 14. And now I was a teenager. Now I was able to go to the arcades and do the things that teenagers are doing. And at this point in time, arcades were now different.
Yeah.
You had only, the things that were standard video games with controllers were fighting games. Other than that, you had tons of interactive games. You had like Time Crisis type of things that had guns. You had things where you'd stand on a skateboard. You had things where you dance. They were all super interactive. They were all very expensive too. Like you were mentioning before, like, maybe it would be $1.50 to go on the snowboard and bounce around on it for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And it was a totally different experience. So I feel like, I was kind of always chasing that my whole life, and I wasn't really able to ever fully experience it just because I was too young.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our generation, like, I guess that kind of like older millennial generation, absolutely for the majority missed out on like the classic arcade. We just did. It wasn't around so much anymore when we were younger. I mean, my experience, I just got super, super lucky with someone in a small town who was like, yeah, I have this stuff. I'm going to do it. Like, there's nowhere else for the kids to hang out. Might as well, open something like this up. So
what you experienced, it sounds like a lot of the things that are happening now with arcades.
Yes. Yes. And something else I think too, with like, that's absolutely resurging with arcades, and being from good old Wisconsin here, we sure know how to make a nice bar. And that is the, the arrival of arcade bars, which I think is why they're able to go back to, some of those 25-cent roots, because they're not making money on the games. The games bring you in, but you're there to drink.
And they run differently. Like, I think I went to my first like arcade bar in Tennessee. I was in Nashville, and there, like, the games are actually free. You just had to. The deal was like,
that's cool.
You had to keep drinking.
That is cool.
Yeah,
so
that's really
you
neat.
just paid for your drinks. But
that's actually a problem.
Yep.
Well,
I'm gonna tell you, the free games is a problem, because that's the main thing about arcades, is trying to like see how little money that you can spend.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine one time, I mean, he still has them. He has about 5 arcade machines: Arkanoid, Commando, Indiana Jones. He had a couple of others, right? So like, we would get together at his house and play them. But like, when you're playing Arkanoid and you can just die and start again, it is a very different experience than when you're like, okay, I have $5 and I need to play for as long as possible. It makes you really focus.
You need that equivalent exchange. You need to have.
There's no stakes if you can just.
For sure.
Yeah, it's like playing. It's like using Game Genie. You're like, okay.
Game Genie, Game Shark, that would later come in. The only arcade machine that I tended to even play with over time was really just the heart rate machine at Walmart. And I'm pretty sure I won. I was good at that game. I could
look at how high this number is.
Holy shit!
I must be the best at this game.
Yeah, I can take it.
Showed up. I win.
Yeah.
Come on, keep pumping. I can take it. Let's go.
Oh god.
It is true though, man. I only had maybe a handful of experiences in a true like arcade setting where that was the establishment, where it wasn't just an offshoot of something. And I would say that like over time, what got replaced with some of the scenarios you mentioned was that now you would see like this standardized. There's like a claw machine. There's one like like vehicle based game or something.
Mhm.
And then there's that one machine where like you have to place a very well placed cut like 50 times to win a PlayStation 3. You know, it's like,
Oh man, those drive me crazy.
Are we not allowed to say
Yeah.
the name of those games, or?
I mean,
I don't know what they're called.
yeah, I don't even know what they are called.
Okay. I didn't know if you were specifically trying to avoid saying the name, like we're gonna have to pay out some royalties or something. I was just like,
No.
I'm pretty sure you're safe to say whatever you want.
No, I mean,
Hell no.
we usually just follow up with they're not a
Not a
of
sponsor.
the
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
But if we have to go with names, I will go ahead and just say the name. They're called shit. They are in fact shit. I hate those things. So like, no one's winning that PS4 off of the damn claw machine. Hi, people that you know, like, oh yeah, how'd you get your PS5? I stopped the light at the right moment. No, you
I spent
no, you didn't do that.
$1,500 to win it at the arcade.
There's a difference
Yeah.
between stopping a button and the skill cut. Okay, those are two different things. Like like stopping the light.
Skill cut is way harder.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the skill cut is like, it's like peeing with echolocation. You know, like I can't try. It's like I'm in the dark and I gotta not hit anything except the water. That's gonna be a too for me.
Yep.
Do you
But
guys
either
have
way, yeah.
in movie theaters by you? Do you have like a mini arcade kind of setup?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only place that I have experienced. Well, I've been to arcades, like, so I'm in New York, and we have some Dave and Buster's. We have like a pinball arcade. We have some barcades with like a few games, but the barcades, they want you to play the game everyone knows. People only go there once in a while, so they always have the super popular machines. Where I'm looking for an arcade that has like, back in the day they would have unpopular stuff because it was still during the time where they were trying things, and unfortunately a lot of the unpopular games have not made it to this decade a lot of the times. But at the movie theater is a place where I'll see arcade games most of the time, and they still have some that I do enjoy playing. Like, I'm sure you've seen this. It is Jurassic Park, and you are inside of a car that moves,
Yeah.
and you are also shooting things.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That thing that didn't happen in any of the movies
ever. Yeah.
But you get to live it.
Yeah, exactly. What you wanted. But that is a really cool arcade game. I even saw it at like truck stop once, like driving across country. I saw just like they had like one arcade machine. It's the Jurassic Park car, and I just had to play it because it's actually a really fun, good game. But everything else was kind of like shoot the basketball hoop and things like that.
How many millions of dollars would they have had to waste to generate that many dinosaurs for you to kill?
I don't know. Do you know how much dinosaurs even cost? They could be cheap.
Dinosaurs back in the day were expensive, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but nowadays you just like harvest some DNA from a mosquito, and then that's pretty much you're good to go, right?
You mix that with a frog and you're gold.
Yeah. So you really just got like labor costs of the scientists mixing together the genomes and everything, and then you just wait for them to be big,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, then there's also like the cost of hiring someone who can take care of your entire network for you. So you can't keep Newman around for cheap. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, so I love how you say cheap, Joe, because I mean, this was a pastime that many of us, this was like your allowance money. This is what you would go and spend that $1 on, or that $2, however much you got. I didn't get a raise on my allowance until I think it was like 97, where we went from $1 to $5, then to $7.50. So my dad was adjusting for inflation. He was ahead of the curve on that one. But one of the earliest experiences I actually have with the arcade, though, and this was pseudo being able to play and not, was The Simpsons. And
God,
really good.
Not and not to be confused with the Simpsons arcade game, just The Simpsons. Because the Simpsons arcade game was the port of the arcade game, not the arcade game itself.
Okay, So you mean the Simpsons arcade game, not the Simpsons arcade game?
Yeah,
Precisely.
Exactly.
that is the one he means.
The
And if you're
Simpsons,
cool, you knew
yes.
exactly what he meant when he just said the Simpsons.
Yes.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Simpsons
I
found in
love
arcades. Yes.
Marge and her vacuum cleaner. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's that game. So the Simpsons game, there's a lot of games that are like it, like the Ninja Turtles game,
Yeah.
X-Men,
Yep.
Yep.
which we could, you could do a whole episode on the X-Men arcade machine. I mean, it's so good. Also, there's the Avengers one that
Yes.
I think was also 4-player, even though X-Men had the 6-player. All like this, the Simpsons, Turtles, and Avengers are all 4-player. One time, a couple of years ago, I was in Washington D.C. for work, and I had like nothing to do at night. So I started looking up arcades. And I did find one. It was like this small arcade where they had like a SNES hooked up at the bar, and they had maybe like 16 arcade machines. They had like Rampage, I remember.
Yeah.
A lot of classics, but they did have the Avengers one. And I think it was like maybe $11 I spent on it. But I did play the entire thing, and the story was actually great. It is an amazing
Nice.
game. It's out of all of those multiplayer ones that I mentioned, the like multiplayer beat 'em ups, that one is rarely talked about, and it has like maybe 20 different characters it introduces between the ones you play, the ones you fight, ones that help you, ones that just kind of like move the story along. It's really good.
Well, it has White Vision / West Coast Avengers, right? Like that.
Yes,
That's
it does.
what you have. Yeah.
I think, yeah, that must have come out around that time. That was a short-lived thing, but yeah,
Yeah.
that definitely does.
Yeah, like you've got like comic accurate Hawkeye at that point. You've got wings on helmet, Captain America, and you've got your classic, bright
Yeah,
yellow.
it was actually very West Coast Avengers, like very West Coast Avengers based. Now that I think about it, like a lot of the other, but it's crazy. Like Namor shows up, Wasp. You fight Ultron. I mean, it is just really good.
I loved that style of arcade game because when you would go from like I mentioned to you guys, I moved every 2 years. I would go from one arcade that would have the 2-player arcade version, and then you would see the 4-player version, and then like you mentioned, you would see the 6-player version at certain ones. So it was a totally different game depending on where you went and who you were playing with. And
totally.
And I think on the Simpsons game, if you were playing 2-player, you just freely move across the screen. But if you're playing 4-player, I'm pretty sure it had a fixed position based on who you were playing, right? Like each player had like an area on the screen, didn't they?
So I'm not sure about that one, but I did play about 2 years ago a 6-player X-Men machine with all 6 people on, and it was purely insane. The whole screen is just exploding. It's like the cool thing about that. So everybody was able to move freely. Cool thing about it is like your quarters last so long.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, because like you're not dying as fast. Like you try to play that game with 2 people, and it's like, okay, you have 6 people on the screen, you're basically just annihilating it. And now, like, the cool thing too is everybody wants to get in on that. So, even this even happened when I was a kid. Like I remember going to like Chuck E. Cheese for my I was in 4th grade, however old you are around then. I went to my birthday with Chuck E. Cheese, played the 6-player X-Men machine from start to finish. But the cool thing is that, every once in a while, like one person would get, they'd play as Colossus or like a level. They'd die, they'd bow out, and somebody else would pop back in. So like you ended up by the end of the game, you played with maybe 25 different people, and everybody was just kind of like taking turns. Like there's a group of people standing around it. That's kind of, that's something that is probably dated about arcades, because like even recently. So when I was playing the X-Men game 2 years ago, and this was at this place called One Up in Denver. Really great arcade. The best arcade that I've seen this century. There's a few different locations in Denver. I was there for a bachelor party and ended up going to this arcade 3 days in a row. But what I noticed, and I have a funny story about that too. So what I noticed was, though, people were like getting bored easier. Like maybe people aren't as much of a big kid as me, but I was playing the X-Men game, and it was actually this time hard for somebody to like stay for long. Like they would put a couple of quarters in. So every once in a while, you know, I would have 6 people going, and then like I'd be down to 4, and I'm like, crap. I'm looking around the room, like, hey, somebody join this. And then like one guy leaves. Now I'm down to like 3. I'm like, holy shit! But then maybe 2 other people would show up. So, you know, it was just less of a community feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like X-Men was like a game I was hoping we were gonna touch on too, because that was definitely like my favorite one growing up. We had it the Dairy Isle in Boston was where I played the majority of it. And it was usually just me and one other friend. They only had I had no idea the 6-player version of that arcade even existed, because they had 4, and I have never played it with more than one other person at the same time. So I got used to trying to play it, and I always play as Colossus because he was my favorite. But then I remember always playing him like, why is his like super move like him just shouting and transferring back to his normal mode? Like, shouldn't that make him weaker?
Right? His special move, though, it's so small.
Yep.
So I would always play as Dazzler.
Yeah.
Because she throws this like light bomb that just it kills like everybody on the screen. It's like, you know, she was a good one. A crazy thing about that arcade game is, have you guys ever seen? This might be an aside, but have any of you ever seen Pride of the X-Men?
Yeah.
Oh, Kitty Pryde.
No,
Yeah, it was
It's
what the failed
the initial,
yeah.
It's the first X-Men animated series pilot that they tried. Yeah, this was made a few years before the Fox X-Men.
Yeah.
And it had a team that was based on the 80s X-Men. So, you know, it had the team from this game, which was Wolverine,
an Australian Wolverine,
Colossus,
by the way.
Australian Wolverine, yes, you know it. And then it had Storm, Dazzler, Cyclops, and there's one other character that I can't pinpoint that was in that arcade game right now. But that was the basic team, and so they were kind of like pushing that. That's why they thought that was going to be the big show. That's why they used those characters in the video game. Then, you know, a lot had happened in the comics, and they were kind of moving forward into the 90s. So they, you know, switched out Dazzler for Jubilee. She was the new character. She was more relatable to kind of like the millennial audience over the Generation X audience. And just some little facts about the X-Men video game.
Can we talk for just a minute about the thigh-high boots that Colossus wore at that point in time in the X-Men universe? Like they're halfway up his back. Like those aren't boots anymore.
And he's tall too. So how big were those things?
In Russia, boots wear you.
Oh my god! I'm sorry, I can never get that image out of my head. Like these things are like they're like over his knees. It's like a guy that tall would not wear boots like that. Come on.
No. Yeah, they really didn't have good uniforms back then. No superhero did. I don't know what the people were thinking when they made these things.
It was definitely fashion over function, and it was a weird fashion.
Was Nightcrawler part of that one too? I can't remember if he was.
Yes, he is. I don't think he is. I was getting that confused because he's kind of been in like every X-Men video game.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe he wasn't in that one, but he definitely was.
Yeah, I distinctly remembered those, mostly because like when like and we're going back to the Avengers for a second, like when WandaVision comes out, people are like going, oh, what's this Caucasian vision thing going on here? And I'm like, hey, West Coast Avengers has been around for a while. This isn't a new idea. This is just pulling from what's already there. But
oh man, I watched that comic shoot up in value, like when that show was out, and then like the next week nobody cared and sold them all. And
Yeah. Oh man. Well, That's actually a really great way to start off, because I think it's important for people to understand where arcades were versus the default that you see now. I think for today, what we were kind of getting excited about here was really just doing, and this is like the roundtable thing. Doug, we started this with you. The roundtable began.
Really? It
Doug
was the
Eberle.
first one?
Yeah.
Well, I guess you need 4 people for it to be round.
Technically.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's just a triangle table.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have the same ring with King Arthur and his knights of the triangle table.
No.
Like, so it was 2 knights. He just had the 2 then. He sat at one corner. Okay.
Yeah. Arthur was socially awkward. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's great to kind of come back to this, because Doug, I think it has been several months since we've had the chance to do a reunion on this.
It feels like a week ago.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah, since Bomberman, buds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, ever since we talked about that, I cannot get the image out of my head with you, like, you've got the vein on the forehead, you're playing at like 4 a.m. and like, and Nikki Sixx is just behind you playing, and you're going nuts. Like that has been frozen in my mind ever since. But honestly, the arcade experience
because you know how it goes.
Well, I mean, the arcade experience wasn't that different. Okay, you were talking about how far you could get with 1 quarter, but who wants to begin?
It's so much more rewarding too, because like you might have to leave.
Yeah, my mom's picking me up at 6. Like, what the fuck do I do?
Oh,
I've got a crowd. My supporters are behind me. I'm crushing it.
Right? Or she's already there picking you up, and you're begging for like 5
Ma,
more minutes.
Please, Ma.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ma.
And it's like you don't understand what's going on right now.
Well,
before we go too far away from X-Men, do you want? On the topic of arcades again. Me and my friend are actually talking like a month ago about the last arcade game. Now, I mean like the last like new exciting game for the old style of arcades.
Yeah.
Really young people probably won't understand this, but it was Marvel versus Capcom. I'll even go up to Marvel versus Capcom 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Yes.
That was like on the cusp of the big video game shift. I remember like, so this is like fighting. Remember when fighting games started dominating everything? Like the first time you saw a Mortal Kombat 2 machine,
Street Fighter,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So those are like paving the way, and all of a sudden there's this Marvel versus Capcom. And you were already familiar with the X-Men arcade machine, and now you're just like, holy shit, this is fucking great. I'm sure games came out after that, but like, you guys didn't notice as much. I mean, definitely games came out. I'm talking about like they made such an impact.
I'm surprised you skipped right over Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, Virtua Fighter is not
Virtua
surprised.
Fighter can be mentioned along. That can be mentioned along with the other fighting games when there was just a slew of fighting games. Like my dates are messed up, but like you would look around and there was just fighting games everywhere. You had Primal Rage, King of Fighters was older but around. You had a lot of different Neo Geo ones. But then like the last one that really like was bringing the next level was definitely the Marvel versus Street Fighter. I feel like it was so unique. It brought in like some Marvel characters people weren't really familiar with into like the whole even it would introduce I'm sure it introduced some new Capcom characters, Street Fighter characters, but which I'm so nowadays.
You're bringing up a good point, and I actually brought up Virtua Fighter just to be facetious because, frankly, I just didn't really care for the graphics of any of those games. But
you didn't like super pointy 3D?
Nice. I think it's overrated.
Well, but your point too, this kind of being the jumping off point. When I start to think about this too, just the state of where consoles were at the same time, I do feel like Smash Brothers just kind of took over after a point. like people are all of a
Oh,
sudden
yeah.
like they're getting their fix from Smash Brothers, and I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but like fighting games for me did lose some of their steam right around like early 2000s, maybe even a little before that.
They definitely, I agree. The thing with Smash Brothers, and the reason that involved more strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Oh, right. Yeah, the fighting games just never really had that. You know, you
could just mash away and it was fine. Like,
right. You could invite a friend over for like the first time ever, and they would just beat you by just being fast.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely wanted to dig into this topic, not just because I've got some really fun experiences with certain titles out there in the wild, but as we start to look at some of the favorite titles, we've mentioned a couple of them. Who wants to throw out their first favorite arcade game experience that they've got here for us?
Experience or game?
Game. If you've got an experience attached to it, that's great. But yeah, let's start talking games.
Favorite game. I feel like I am a very classic when I love all sorts of arcade games, don't get me wrong, but if we're in an arcade and unlimited arcade games are available to me, and what I'm going to be walking back, and it's probably kept in a corner because it's not as new and shiny and fancy as all the stuff that's out there, is absolutely like your Galaga and Space Invaders. Like every single time, that's my one single quarter, and like I'm gonna be here all night, bitches. That's me.
How many levels were there in that? Because I feel like when we talked about that rule of 50, Doug, if you remember, with like Bomberman and Snow Brothers,
arcades.
It doesn't. Yeah, like how many levels were? I mean, I don't even know how many there were because I never played those games that far.
Honestly, I've never beaten it. Yeah, I don't think they ever end. I think it just constantly goes forever and ever.
Yeah, like it might start back at some sort of point where it kind of zeroes out, but your score is going to stay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So it's not quite a prestiging thing yet. It's just
it's the game that never ends.
Baby.
Those games were mostly about scores, putting in your initials. It wasn't like I'm playing to finish this.
Yeah, no, because there is no right, exactly. You would play to have your freaking 3 little characters up above some other motherfucker's 3 little characters, and every time they come in and see that they're still not as good as you, an angel gets their wings, like.
But then the real game begins when the arcade shuts down and you purchase the machine, and you've got to get to your apartment before the battery you've rigged to it runs out.
What do you do?
But once you
there you go.
Yeah.
It's so funny how long it takes me to get the Seinfeld references you made. Like, it should be so quick, but I'm just like, huh?
What?
You're like, that's a strange scenario.
I'm like, oh, did that happen to you?
Yeah. I also have Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in my basement.
Oh, God.
The best part about beating those games, though, is at the end, especially Marvel vs. Capcom, it says, you've beaten the game, now go play Load Runner. And that's your... That's your
and you know what? I do have to say, in case there's any purists out there that rain hellfire, the original Galaga had 225 levels.
Whoa!
Wow!
Yeah!
Oh, wow!
Yes.
That's a commitment.
I think they go higher than that maybe now. So, yeah.
Wow!
So, how far did you ever get with it?
Not anywhere near that. Are you kidding me?
Like 13 is like maybe. You're doing really well.
Oh no, I could get up into the 50s and 60s in my prime for sure. Yep.
Wow.
Yes. We had, oh my God, my grandparents had that on the, oh, are you kidding me? I can't, like the original arcade, like, or at home. Atari, thank you. My God. My grandparents had it on the Atari, and we had like army of cousins. I did, and you take turns, and when your turn is over, when you die, like it's someone else's turn, and like they would literally moan when it was my turn, like, oh my God, no.
Looks like we're not playing for the rest of the night.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
See, I think that's why the fighting game and the format of like a Turtles game was appealing to us, because one of the arcade games that we played the most of was, of course, Turtles in Time, or I think it was stylized as TMNT 4 at one point. I can't remember. They're trying to go with the NES numbering system, but I mean, this was like for the time in 1992. I think the pilot machine showed up in like 91, but like this was the bestseller. It was everywhere. Not to be confused with Hyperstone Heist, very similar game to come out later. but this was a fun game because it had the joystick, but when you use the joystick in tandem with the buttons, you could do different moves. You could jump higher, you could slide. There was the dash attacks, so it wasn't just move, press a button. It was like, no, you've got a little bit more going on here, like like when Madden tried to introduce the shake stick and all that kind of shit. This was like the proto version of that.
It looked really good too.
Oh God, yes.
I remember the first time I saw that game, like people have said like the console ports were good for that game, but man, the arcade was really, really nice looking.
Yeah. You practically humped that machine. You had to look good.
The movement of the turtles, it was like looking at the cartoon. At least it was back then. I haven't played it in a long time. I'm sure it looks different now, but I just remember the animations being just like so on point.
Well, I think you've got a really good point about it just in general, because for one, you've got just the color schemes of that era of the Turtles, and they just really pop, and so it almost feels like a moving comic in a lot of ways, and and I gotta mention something about this because it always bothered me as a kid. Very beginning of the game, the Turtles are like sitting there watching Shredder doing his thing, like attacking the town. And then they're watching the TV as it's happening, and he's like pointing at them and laughing, and they're like getting all upset. And I go, it's like, it's not like Shredder's talking to just them through the TV. Like, he's talking to the whole city, guys. Okay. Let's not take it that personally, but whatever.
Maybe it's like when your dad is watching a football game, he's mad that like they're not listening to him. Like the head coach isn't listening. Like, are you kidding me? Why would you run out? Why would you do a pass on first down? What's wrong with you? they can hear that. It's just the reverse effect the Turtles are having. He's fucking calling us out. Like, we see that son of a bitch.
They're all huddled around this like 8-inch by 6-inch TV, getting so pissed, and you're like, oh, come on, guys, come on.
Oh,
hey, he was always messing with them. They had, maybe some reason to think it was for them, maybe just a little.
This is just for you.
Yep. In the background, you got Splinter going like, guys, he's just on TV. And they're like, dude, he looked at us crossways.
Yeah.
Oh. No, that's a TV.
I think what was great about the arcade, this is something about this before it got ported that was really unique, was that you had characters like Baxter Stockman that didn't seem to get a whole lot of like daylight after this until almost like the Michael Bay movies and the animated series, of course. But then you've got like Cement Man, like Toka and Razor actually show up in this game too, and they
really? I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, they didn't have any love outside of the movie, and obviously some of the comic stuff. But I mean, yeah, you get like Leatherhead too in here, and I mean, I don't know. It was just, there's something about the arcade version. Like they pulled more from this, like, I don't know, they pulled some source material, they pulled from the movies a little bit. And yeah, it was just a really fun, cohesive, addictive experience that, I mean, the port wasn't bad. Like, Doug, I agree with you. The port was good. We all loved it. But yeah, there's something just Something
I
about that
usually
arcade
hear so
experience.
much about it though. Like people consider it a very good port.
Yeah.
And I guess it is. It's hard for me to view it that way nowadays.
Well, I
You know how
mean,
it is.
my husband asks for it every single time we go into the comic book store. So he's like, "Do you have Turtles in Time?"
This is true. The past
Yeah.
2 times I've gone with him to the comic book store, he has asked for it.
And now, I mean, and we discovered that other place that sells all
Yeah.
sorts of used and classic games by us. And every time we go in there, do you have Turtles in Time today?
Yep. Poor little Valhalla video, which is just like
Yeah.
a little hole in the wall shop. Every
amazing.
time Matt goes in, do you have Turtles in Time?
It's adorable.
It'll be there one day.
I know, and he'll be so excited.
Is that one of those games that has become like sought after and hard to find now? I can see that being a pricey one.
It's it's a cult favorite pretty much. So it is. It's difficult to find, and obviously, I mean, for sure, could he go out there and buy it on eBay if he really wanted to? Like,
That's not fun, though.
absolutely.
It's not
No,
fun.
that's not the full experience,
No,
right? Like
you
definitely
want
not.
the full experience.
Yeah, you want the full experience.
Yes, the thrill of the hunt.
When I bought the
Totally.
cartridge, I bought the cartridge of this in 2006 when I was in college. And I think even back then it was like a $65-$70 game.
Which is huge because nothing sold for that much then.
No.
Oh
Nothing.
yeah, back then
Like
it was like dollar
Earthbound.
games in Funko Land.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Earthbound was going for that much. Secret of Mana was going for that much, but Mario RPG was, but holy cow, man! Like for some reason, Turtles in Time became one of those games that, and Hyperstone Heist, they kind of got lost.
I never played that one.
It's a very, very similar game. Like they borrowed a lot from it, and but those games kind of got lost. And I think because of the fact that maybe they were a little more scarce because of that whole porting side of it. Because TMNT 2 is the
they
one.
came out at a time where Ninja Turtles was kind of a declining property.
Yeah.
My husband again would fight you for saying that.
Well, I would have to. I'm not saying I don't like Ninja Turtles, but at that time it was like, kids had moved on. They were watching. There was Batman the Animated Series and Power Rangers now.
For
Yeah.
sure.
You know?
I would say they kind of, the Turtles disappeared for a pretty good chunk of time, actually. I feel
They
like
did.
it wasn't again until we were in like our mid-20s, maybe even, that they finally popped back. And I think it was did they do the new animated show first, or was it straight to that
Well, there
one
was
of those first movies that like the TMNT movie or something
there,
like that, which
well,
was
there,
epic.
There was the live action attempt TV show.
Oh my god,
in the
that
late
did not
90s.
help it. Yeah.
Right.
the
I
current-
think that's declining time though.
The
That was
current
declining.
comic series has been like one of the best-selling modern comic runs every, whenever. I'm not sure if it's even monthly at this point, but it's doing very well right now.
Yeah.
Which when I found out, I haven't read any of it. I've heard about it though. It's like the last Ronin series and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds really cool. Actually, it sounds like it's kind of like you have the original comics, which were mature, and then when the cartoon got big and younger children started getting into it, they published a lot of comics that were meant to appeal to the fans of the cartoon.
Yes.
So I feel like there was kind of a decline in, taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, but for a time, it dominated arcades. Like you went into an arcade.
For real.
That was the one that was usually right towards the front position, so you saw it. You didn't usually miss that machine. So
yeah, there's a barcade close to me. Well, actually, I think it might have closed down during COVID, but they did have, the original Ninja Turtles arcade machine. Even that one's fun to play.
Oh yeah.
The unbeatable
even
one.
That one's better than the ports. You have all these different moves you can do. Because I don't know if you've played the arcade game for NES. It is. I liked it when I was a kid. I was very excited about it, but it is not that good. The arcade one, even the original arcade one, is like an experience.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what other experiences do we have? that we wanted to bring to the table today?
Mine was probably Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was definitely mine. And that was one where I remember like definitely like growing up, like of course X-Men at the Dairy Alley was big, and then Cozy's Pizza in Boston. Mortal Kombat was big there for the longest time, that I loved looking forward to playing. But then I remember like I traveled to Madison because we went there like kind of regularly growing up as a kid. And at that mall in the arcade, there was Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and like, this is amazing. This game is freaking nuts. Like again, like the characters were like a huge lineup for Marvel and a huge Capcom lineup. And so I always went with good old modular Iron Man from the time. So you could summon like this massive cannon that was like bigger than the Hulk.
That's right.
And then Ryuk, who's my favorite character from Capcom. And then my third was always like, I always like let someone else pick for me. Like, just pick a random person. It'll be great. And I think my brother like one time stuck me with a Shuma Garath, who's this big like squiddy looking guy.
Oh yeah.
And he was like annoyingly fun to play, like because he had a pretty good reach to him. And I honestly don't remember any of his moves. I think he sends out a bunch of little versions of him or something ridiculous. But yeah, it was just playing that game was really big. And this was
Omega
a time.
Red in that one.
Omega Red was in this one. He had a really great finisher. He was just really cool because
when you mentioned the reach, I was thinking that was a cool character to play with.
Yep.
See,
absolutely.
I thought you were saying like just go ahead and pick any third because nobody's getting through these first two.
Usually true, to be honest. With Iron Man, I could be such a dick. Like, I would either one actually just go out and like slam people with the unibeam over and over again. I just spam that, or I'd kind of like be a dick and just use the repulsor and let people actually come at me, and you just trigger at the right time. And so like he holds it up, and this blast like goes like both like above him, in front of him, and behind him. So if you use it right, it's just a perfect counter. It's gonna like mess up anyone from coming to hit you, and then you can just start fucking nailing them with a combo. So I would just usually just bait people. Like, I'd throw out something easy for them to dodge, like the unibeam, to make them jump and then jump towards me. And as they're jumping towards me, you hit them with a repulsor blast, then you just fuck them up from there. So I would usually just do that, and my friends would struggle to beat me. And when I say they struggled to beat me, they weren't expecting it, because like when it finally came to Cozy's, I'm like, this game looks fun and new, everyone. Let's try playing this game. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Little do they know, I'd been training on it in Madison.
Just fucking hustling a bunch of kids.
And it got to the point where they wouldn't play with me anymore. I'm like, that's fine. I did this to myself.
The isolation was worth it.
Just completely. The bragging rights.
Yeah.
And then that eventually gets ported to like the PlayStation 2, and I bought it on there, and like same experience. Like my friends couldn't beat me on it, and I was really happy about it. Because it turns out like fighting games that's my jam. I'm pretty good at them. And it came time years down the line where my PlayStation 2 is not even working anymore, but I still have that game. And like, I think it was like Street Fighter 4 came out. I'm like, this looks really cool, looks really good. But Chelsea and I are currently broke, living over a weird insurance company in Whitewater.
In an apartment with no heat, mind you.
No heat.
That's not us being dramatic.
No,
we like the group huddled for warmth, and we fought over the cat. Like, that's what fucking happened.
But fuck, if we'd not have a great skylight.
Oh, sure. We did have a great skylight.
Hella skylight.
We really did.
Bar adjacent, and all like the pizza and like shitty college food around us you could ever ask for.
And we lived directly above a super nerdy, weird smelling like video game resale store. It was amazing.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That could go so badly.
Correct. Yeah, because you could just wake up and roll down the stairs and head on in, and you know them by name because you're in there all the time, and you spend all your money on stuff you don't need, except for when you're Joe and you just
you roll down there and you're like, hey, I would like that new version of Street Fighter, and like, that's $60. I'm like, I don't have that. but I do have this copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and they're like, we will give you $150 in-store credit for that game.
Yeah.
Sold.
Yep. We were fucking kings. Like, seriously, we were like,
Doug, there was a point in time. Yeah, there was a point in time where that game was like, if you saw cocaine fall out of like a speaker in the back of a truck, you're like, fuck it, no, that's not worth as much as Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So stay away from that.
And the crowning moment of that whole thing, when I gave them that game, is they open it up and like, there's still the instruction manual here. This is incredible. Then they
we got a deal.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, you're an idiot."
Yep. They're like, the disc is also pristine. Like, there's no scratches on it. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty great. And then they looked at the front again, like, is this a fucking movie gallery stamp? I'm like, yeah, I got it from Movie Gallery for $5 when they were just getting rid of their old games. So
you could have hung on to that instruction manual and sold it to them a week later and gotten more money.
Yeah, could have.
I should have.
You could have.
I am not a businessman.
$250.
Oh, I could have had more games.
Oh yeah, it was store credit. I fucking forgot.
They weren't giving me cash.
Oh my god, that's right. Oh my god, because you would be like, "Yep, still got $75 left on that credit." I remember that now.
Like, what game were we getting this weekend?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I do have a game / experience that I'd want to share with everyone, and because this was one of those games that I would not own for years until like after the arcade game, and it was a very popular game in the mid-90s called Killer Instinct.
Yes.
But it was Killer Instinct 2, stylized as KI2, of course, by Rare, the same folks, behind Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong Country, yeah,
and GoldenEye, right?
Yeah.
Yep, Rare did that.
Same folks, and Joe, you wouldn't have liked Killer Instinct 2 because opposite of your experience with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and being able to dominate people, well, actually maybe you would have, because in Killer Instinct 1, blocking and strategically spamming things was the way to go.
Oh yeah.
And in Killer Instinct 2, the developers were like, yeah, fuck all that. We're gonna make this. This is gonna be like the Russian bomb approach, where you just throw 400 at the ground and hope that one hits your target. Like, that's what we're doing. And this game was one that always sat in the roller rink in California, in the military base that we were on. And I would go to this roller rink usually because of a friend's birthday party, not because we ended up there organically. And so we were there at this kid's birthday party, and I'm like bored out of my fucking mind. I'm like going, look, I'm overweight. I don't have much stamina. I don't have much out there. So I'm like, what am I going to do to get through this fucking party? Well, this is like, pre-capitalism Mark. So I just had the money I brought with me, which wasn't very much. I think I maybe had like $2. So
you already spent $5 of that $7 allowance. I see.
Yeah.
Rough week, guys.
Living
Rough
fast and loose, huh? I get it.
I actually used to buy like the half-liter Gatorades because it was the desert, okay? And
I mean,
and so what I would do is I would drink it down halfway and then pour water in, because it was so sugar infused that I would essentially have another full bottle. So there's a little bit of yeah. Poor man.
That's Mark, a good idea.
But anyway, I've got a little bit of money, and so here's the Killer Instinct 2 machine. I don't want to get out there, even though they're playing Quad City DJs. I was ready to jump on the train.
This is my jam, but okay.
I'm gonna hold off. So I go over to the Killer Instinct 2 machine, and I've got 50 cents that I'm willing to allocate towards it. So I throw it on in there. And I got to pick my boy Saberwolf, because, I mean, who doesn't love to do the spin moves and the howling? I mean, it's just a good combination. So at that point in time, I was a decent gamer. Like, if I spent a little bit of time with video games, I was all right. But I hadn't like unlocked next level Mark yet. Like, this wasn't the Mark that, was like playing like the Rocky game on hard and like beating everybody without trying. So anyway,
well before Puss in Boots.
Oh, fuck that game.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. But here I start my my journey on Killer Instinct 2. And it was not uncommon for me to get through like the first 3 or 4 fighters, and then like suddenly I get clammy, right? So I get through the first 4 fighters and I'm like, all right, cool, I'm feeling pretty good, looking around like, all right, yep, they're still skating, the party's still going. Well, then I reach like the 5th fighter and then the 6th fighter, and I'm like going, holy shit, that Gargos motherfucker's staring right at me. Like I'm almost there. Like I'm getting to the end of it. And I'm only on 50 cents, by the way. I have not spent any money outside of 50 cents. No continues at all. So like I'm riding this 50 cents and I'm like, nope, I am determined. I am going to beat this fucking game on just these 2 Washingtons. Let's see what happens. And next thing I know, I'm on the boss's doorstep, fucking Gargos himself. And I'm like, holy shit. Like I'm like 11 years old. This is like the most I have done up to this point. like this is everything. And at this point, getting to the boss in Killer Instinct 2 at the arcade was still like a legend. Like there's rumors and people talked about it, but no one's actually experienced it. And like the rumor was you can only beat Gargos if you knock that fucker off the tower. You can't just like knock down his health bar because he regenerates health. Couldn't confirm if that was the truth or not. I don't know. I mean, it was the 90s. It was weird. But that didn't matter because for some reason, like I went into the zone and like all I can hear is Bon Jovi because for some reason that's what was playing. And I knock off like a 60 combo move on this fucker in the last round. Knock him off the tower. I'm standing here still in my roller skates, by the way. Like I'm still sitting in fucking roller skates the whole time. Knock him off the tower. I'm like, you know what? It didn't matter if the rumor mattered because he's fucking dead. I knocked that motherfucker off on 50 cents. I was there for like 40 minutes. 50 cents. Fucking killed it, man. So that's my Killer Instinct 2 story. It's one I was very happy with.
That's crazy.
That makes the victory I'm going to talk about sound like nothing. So thank you.
And to bring us down for the evening, here's Doug Eberle.
Yeah, some smooth jams with Doug as you slide right into that bed.
Oh my god! So, I had a video game victory recently. So you're gonna notice a trend here. So I was in Daytona Beach, Florida, at some place that claimed to be the have the most amount of arcade of pinball machines. It was kind of like a pinball museum, but they did have maybe like 50 arcade machines too. It's a huge place. And I see a machine that was one of the first machines I ever saw. Like I mentioned Models earlier. One of the machines I saw was Millipede.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I knew you'd like that based on your games.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I also played this on, NES for a while. Like I had it, so I got pretty good at it. So I'm at this arcade with my wife, and mostly we were playing like 2-player games and stuff, like Street Fighter fighting games. Then I'm like, oh my god, I see Millipede, so I go over to it. Right on 1/4, I don't know how far I got, but I was playing this thing for like 15 minutes straight. It was going so fast. She's standing there looking at me like, what the hell? Like she couldn't believe it. Now here's the victory that I got. I was able to put my initials in, and I was like, not the last one. I was like, maybe, right? I was like maybe number 4, and I put my initials into the machine. I think that might have been the only. Well, I don't really put my initials. I just put DUG.
Yeah.
But that was the only time in my life I ever did that, where I actually got to like the leaderboard. And I think it was only going to happen because like I'm at this place where nobody was probably even touching the Millipede machine. I don't even know if my sword was a good sword.
Yeah, but that.
Oh my god, I love it.
Really nice.
That means you were beating the people who were playing it at its peak. So it's like you were playing the best, Doug. You were beating the best.
Yeah, like imagine that. Like they hadn't turned on the machine since like 1985, and then
Hey, I'd be right there doing it too. So
Yeah, it's a really underrated arcades, classic arcade style game. It's a
yes,
really good one.
yes, I love it.
Yep. Another one, like I've always really enjoyed like car-based arcade games too. So like I mean, like Jurassic Park is obviously fun because like you're in the car, you're shooting things, but the actual driving and racing ones, like Cruising
You want to
USA.
cruise, yeah.
Ooh,
They
yeah.
had that at a Pizza Hut by me.
Mm-hmm.
I had
You
that game.
just slam, you just double tap that gas pedal to really get the nitro going and go up on two wheels. Oh, get out of here.
I thought you were going to say Sugar Rush for a minute, playing, Princess Penelope von Schweetz.
Well, I mean, that would have been great too, but I settled for my look-alike but distinctly different, not quite Ferrari Testarossa that you'd always pick for that game.
Hold on a second. We talked about the Jurassic Park game, but we haven't talked about Dino Crisis yet.
Yep.
Is this related to Time Crisis?
No. It's like, well, actually, maybe I am thinking of Time Crisis. Maybe that is what I'm thinking of, is Time Crisis. Because that was
it's like a Lethal Enforcers style game, or Area 51.
That's the one. I am thinking of Time Crisis. Yes, okay. Time Crisis and Area 51. That was at every single military base. Like you walked in, and they're like right next to each other.
They were everywhere at some point. The Jurassic Park game that I brought up is similar to those. Like something pops out of the corner, and you're like, "Oh god!"
Yep.
Yeah, something throws a claw or a knife at you that you'll never hit. It just always hits the screen. Yeah.
You shoot to the side to reload.
Yes.
Yeah. Fucking I remember working at the Kalahari, and we had one of the, I don't know how the fuck they got it, but they had one of the few, I think it was when Time Crisis, it was either 3 or 4, wasn't really out yet. And this was one of the handful of machines that was roaming through North America. And you're not going to be able to play this literally anywhere else in the Midwest right now. We're the only one in the Midwest with it. This is incredible. And me and my buddy Josh Benson would
them out.
Oh yeah. We would fucking try and leave early from work every day just to make it so we can make it to the arcade before it would close at the Kalahari. Don't wait tables, we're gonna play fucking Time Crisis, bitches.
God, I've spent so much money in that motherfucking game room in my life that I don't really want to think about it.
Well, Time Crisis is one of those expensive ones.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is a complete contrast to the pure and innocent arcade that I grew up with. Spending all my time in dirty corporate money arcade.
It's true though. Those were starting to dominate after a certain point. And then I know we talked a little bit about House of the Dead earlier, but House of the Dead was the other one that just the on-rail shooter just took over.
Good though. You just want to look at it. That's how they got away with it.
Yeah, you want to look at the excellent voiceover work where the mouths are moving completely with the English. Yeah.
It's a very, very loose story in every one of those too. It's as captivating as we're willing to make it.
I was gonna say it's as captivating as the Yuva Bowl movie of the same name that came out in the early 2000s, which was just as brutal as the game. But I mean, yeah, that's kind of going back and looking at the arcade experience. I mean, Doug, you have a really good point that in the beginning, this was more about high scores and not necessarily narrative or story-driven experiences or anything. These are just, let's show off our skills for as long as we can and hope that we've hit that leaderboard, and then there was the rise of the fighting game, and those took many different forms. And I mean, fighting games are obviously still popular now, but then we got that whole on-rail shooter experience that kind of brought us through to the late 90s, and then the arcade just kind of tanked after that point, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The crazy thing is they never really went away. They just changed. like as we said at the beginning, it's like more games that everybody can play, just not video games. I mean, there's still incorporate video games, but I don't know. Have you guys ever been to a Dave and Buster's? Do you have those by you?
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's fun, right? But, as somebody who likes video games and arcades, you go in there and it's just missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know. To me, and because again, I have like this totally separate experience of an arcade where it is seriously you walk in and it's only like, old school quarter machines, and that's what it's about. I mean, you're lucky if there's a concession counter and if you can get a slice of pizza there.
Yeah.
And then you go to something like a Dave and Buster's and it's not really about that anymore. And it's like, I kind of think like Chuck E. Cheese and all of those like stuff, it's all kind of clumped in there for one. You're not even necessarily there to play the arcade games, but then there's all that other just like carnival game crap. And you're there for tickets and for shitty prizes. Like it gets watered down.
Yeah.
With all this extra shit.
Yeah. It's corporate America going ahead and taking the arcade and making it into something more profitable.
Yeah, I mean, and that stuff can be like absolutely
or maybe
fun.
That'll just survive.
Yeah,
like I like a good skee ball.
Good
I'm
old
not
skee ball.
not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just
or that one where you can shoot the clowns because clowns are assholes.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is something that Chelsea you mentioned here. This was a part of the experience that I think some people may have forgotten, was that being able to get a slice of pizza while you play and incorporating grease into the joystick experience. That
not very 2020 of them.
Hey, was that your secret weapon in KI too?
Dude,
gotta grease them up good.
Because I know those roller rinks always, they weren't known for their health food.
No, no, but that's seriously how it was. You like have your little plate with your pizza. You just plop it up on top of the console, man. And yeah, like if you're touching like the whole like console experience and playing it, like you got the controller and everything, and your hands might get sweaty while you play, but you're at the actual arcade. Yeah, like you're at the arcade, and it's like a totally different thing. And like if there's not grease on the buttons and the joystick, I'm like, sorry, I got to get something on this. This is useless to me. There's
more than grease on there, buddy.
Bring a snotty child over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Well, I've got to say, Doug, this is always a fun time bringing you, into the digital dissection experience. We're so happy to have you as always, and
thanks for having me.
Yeah, is there anything else about arcades that we haven't stated yet? Is there anything else about the arcade experience maybe we want to bring back or that we hope returns? What are we thinking?
For me personally, it would just be to make them seem kind of dangerous.
Ooh, edgy arcade.
Edgy arcades. That's what I remember growing up. That's what I would see. Maybe it was partially the fact that I wasn't allowed to go there, but even
the forbidden zone.
In like, read an 80s comic book and somebody's in the arcade and there'll be some teenagers, playing some video game, and some guy might come over and try to coax them into some sort of, horrible lifestyle, like, hey, you want to do some drugs and things like that. I mean, I feel like it used to have a stigma attached to it. It was also like back then, maybe where kids would go where adults would not be. So you'd have a bunch of, let's say it's like a timeout section in the mall, and like the rest of the mall, you have people shopping for perfume and doing kinds of things like this, and doing all sorts of normal things. And then it's like, oh, here, let's go escape into the arcade. And like, maybe they would go outside and like smoke weed and then disappear in there. And it would be like a maze. You have all of your machines high up in the air and all these different pathways. Like the ones that I went to in Denver that seemed most like the one that I first went to when I was a kid, that was to me, a real arcade because it was only video games and you can get lost in there. It was just rows and rows and rows. You wouldn't, nobody was able to really see you easily. There's things towering above your head. It had just like dark paint everywhere. And it was just, bare bones. Nothing was there except for playing video games. So just that kind of whole vibe is something I would like to see. And you kind of get it in the barcades, but I don't know. Maybe I'm experiencing it as an adult now. Maybe somebody else who's younger is having these experiences where it seems kind of like somewhere you're not supposed to be.
I've got a perfect kid to help you with that. Yeah.
Now, back then too, video games were very new, and to the earlier generations, they were looked at like, what are these kids doing? Like,
yeah,
I don't think we'll really ever be able to get that back.
Yeah, I think I get what you're.
That's what they were doing.
What are they doing? Literally, what?
Youths.
See, I was thinking for a minute there, Doug, that you're like going, I'm like wanting like some kind of Squid Game experience where like if I don't beat the game,
I
Who
want
hurt
Dangerous
you?
Arcade's back.
Yeah.
There's like going to the back of my head, and it's like, you better. And I'm playing something that's like really hard, like the first Donkey Kong game, and they're like, "Don't you fall off a ladder? I'm gonna kill you." And I'm like, "Oh no, I am dead."
No.
God, what a.
Or like burger time, pickles start coming out, and I'm like, "Oh no."
What a rush! This is what I have to do to feel now.
Oh my god.
Oh man.